easily find access to material, as internet will provide very soon, is providing now, but even more so in the future. So we think if St. Paul were around, he would say 100%, that's exactly where he wants to be available to the number of people who can tune in.
So, continuing down the road with St. Paul, the site spreads the word with everything from online theologians prepared to debate the teachings of the church to a store where you can buy Christmas cards and rosaries. There are links here to let you download the Vatican's collection of religious art. There are curricula for parents teaching their children at home. There's access to every diocesan homepage, weekly newspapers, web magazines, Catholic directories. The website was the brainchild of businessman and publisher James Mulholland, who describes himself as a happily committed Roman Catholic. It was Mr. Mulholland who was chosen to explain the site to Pope John Paul when the pontiff visited New York, is unlikely to forget.
Pope came in, then we explained that we would be reaching the 30 to 40 million people now and could be reaching 200 million, 500 million, big numbers like that by the year 2000. I further told him that we were going to develop home pages for all of the dioceses, and his response was, in the world? And I said, yes, in the world. And then he said, in China too? And I said, yes, in China. Then at the end of it, he said that this is very, very great. A quotation I love to repeat.
It's little wonder the Pope was impressed, for there are links here to some of the most heavenly locations in cyberspace. But the Church's move into cyberspace is not without some risk, because the internet is not always an entirely respectable place to be. So are the religious leaders worried that by encouraging people to click onto the web, they might also be introducing them to the seedy red light districts of the net? Apparently not.
If you have a cultural identity, if you stand for something, you know what you must reject. You can't stand for something culturally without rejecting something. And so we don't want to talk about censorship or the rights of people. If I'm a Christian, I reject pornography as an insult to God and creation. If someone wants to seduce people through internet, I consider that so objectionable that I can't tolerate it. So I am, of course, not going to tune into that sort of thing, but culturally I don't think internet should have it. That's my position. Whether internet has it or not is outside my power. I'm a Catholic, so I think Michelangelo's nudes are marvelous, and Catholics have no trouble with that, even Brigitte Bardot in her glorious day. We're not talking about that. We're talking about vice, and that's a very different thing. And of course, we're also talking about vice as it touches the impressionable. We hope enough people will know what they stand for to say, no, that's not acceptable in my home, and one way or another, it has to be kept out of my home.
They feel much the same way about that issue here in New Jersey, where Presbyterian minister, the Reverend Charles Henderson, has created a site called the First Church of Cyberspace.
My faith begins with the opening chapter, the prologue of St. John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Traditionally, Christians have identified the Word with Jesus Christ, but Jews have also seen, and others have realized, that there's a greater subtlety to that than just Jesus Christ equals the Word. The Word really refers to the wisdom. It is the structure of truth that ties the whole cosmos together. And we say that that is part of God, or it is God. Now, the whole idea of the World Wide Web is that ultimately all of human knowledge could be tied together through the links of hypertext. Now, if you achieved that and you had all human wisdom tied together in an interconnecting web, this would be analogous to the biblical concept of the Word. So, couldn't you say, in the beginning was the web?
Central Presbyterian in Montclair is one of the most established Protestant communities in this part of New Jersey. But like lots of other churches bringing light to the rest of us, Central Presbyterian is having a tough time holding on to its congregation. To help pay the bills, Central actually shares its space with local Baptists, a Korean Presbyterian community, and a Reconstructionist synagogue. And now, Central has reached out to yet another congregation on the internet as the first church of cyberspace. Its organizing pastor believes, in fact, that as modern as the net might be, it is just catching up to the Bible.
The Bible is the world's first hypertext document. And what I mean to say is, have you ever tried to read the Bible from start to finish? You start in Genesis, pretty interesting. The 5 first books of the Bible are pretty dramatic, but then you get into those books that are just law books, and you get into long descriptions of how the temples were created and the exact dimensions of this or that or the other thing, and it becomes fairly boring. You have to be a real survivor to read the Bible linearly in a linear way from the front to the end. And that wasn't the way it was meant to be read anyway. The way the Bible was created was you took poetry, you took drama, you took laws, and it was put together by different people in different situations over a long period of time. But when they put it together, they built in links from one part of the Bible to another part of the Bible. So that, for example, if you were reading the 23rd Psalm and it talked about a shepherd who guided somebody through a dangerous place, that word shepherd would be a kind of link, if you were literate in the Bible, to other places where the word shepherd had been used. And so as you read it, you would think of all those other links. Your mind would jump to those different places, those different circumstances where those words also appeared. And pretty soon you'd have a conversation going between what the psalmist was saying and what other people in different contexts meant by the words. And so the experience of reading that would be similar.
Is that it's given many of them a whole new field of interest. Church member John Grover has been attending Central Presbyterian for nearly 50 years.
I felt that as a senior citizen that I had a choice to make, either to step aside and wave as things happened around me among my family and in the business community when I'd go back and say hello to the people I used to work for and wave to them, or go into computers and try to be part of the act. And I think it's a challenge to me as a senior, and I think it's a challenge to other seniors as well, to become, hopefully, computer literate.
As well as becoming computer literate, Mr. Grover has become the first artist in residence of the First Church of Cyberspace. It's his painting of the church which graces their site. In the 1930s through the 1950s, there were about 800 regular church members here. Now the total congregation is less than 250. But the website is attracting over 1,000 regular visitors every week.
If you take a national poll of the American population and ask, what's your religious preference? 10 million people say that they're Presbyterians. But we only have 2.7 million Presbyterians who are members of churches. And of that 2.7 million, only about 1/3 of those are in a typical church on a Sunday morning. So that's about 1 in 10 Presbyterians who are actually in churches like this. So that movement away from the church has already happened. And what the internet will allow us to do is to begin communicating with those people who have already opted out and to try to make a connection with them. And I think that the result of that will be they'll come back in. People want to meet, they want to communicate with each other. The need for friendship is a fundamental human reality. And to the extent that this tool will help people have friendship and have real community, it will exist. If it doesn't do that, it will fade away, because what people want is contact with other human beings.
It seems the church has been doing just about everything you can think of to bring people into their places of worship. And now the internet has triggered a monumental explosion of religious information and splendor, unlike anything we've seen in the history of anybody's church.
The web has a tendency to break down walls between people. When people surf the internet, they can jump from a fundamentalist page to a Buddhist page to a Muslim page to a Catholic page, just like that in a matter of seconds. And there's no one standing there saying, oh, don't come into this place because this is different from what you believe, or don't do this because this is a heresy, or that's a bad idea, so don't go there. There aren't any policemen. So everybody has total freedom to go wherever they want. And so this means that it will tend to break down rigid ideologies. Organizations' ideologies will tend to lose out. Organizations that can speak to a much wider audience and to appeal to people in a much more ecumenical basis, I believe, will thrive.
The proliferation of religious sites which are thriving on the net are not all from the established and traditional churches, but on the internet. You can even start your own church, which is just what Ben Pollock of Gainesville, Florida, has done. Mr. Pollock's day job is with the Florida State Welfare Department.
I currently am a case analyst for the Office of Child Support Enforcement for Florida's Department of Revenue. If an absentee parent owes money to raise a child and it should be paying it, we go after them, canceling their driver's license, their professional licensing, if they have any, going after them in court, citing them for contempt when they fail to obey a court order.
After a day chasing people who run away from their parental obligations, Ben Pollock goes online as a pastor for his new church, which is officially recognized in the state of Florida. He's performed a couple of weddings, baptism, quite a few blessings, and taken a handful of confessions on the net. But he insists he's not tied into any established religion and that his church of cyberspace is a whole new entrant in the race for enlightenment.
Someone once asked me to describe it in 10 words or less, and I didn't think I could. I managed to come up with one sentence. Oh God, what was the exact sentence? A postmodern, techno-industrial, libertarian deist religious sect. Now, for those of you who understand none of that, we are a bunch of people who basically got together 5 years ago and decided that there were 2 or 3 things that no matter what you believed, you believed. Our basic moral premise is very libertarian. As long as you don't hurt someone that didn't consent to be hurt, it's pretty much okay.
Out on the internet, there are fake religions, there are joke religions, there are humorous religions. This is freedom of speech. You invite a bunch of college students with a modem and a computer to create a new religion, and that's naturally what they're going to do. It's entertaining, it's fun, it's exciting. But the question is, what are people going to actually tune into, and what value are they going to gain out of it? And a joke religion will last, you know, a lot. It would be good for a laugh and good for a joke, and fine. I don't think that really does anybody any real harm. But if you can offer some more substance that speaks to people at a deeper level than a joke, then I think you've got something that people will see the value of, and they will keep coming back, and it will gain momentum and have, it will endure.
I find that more and more these days, all people really want is someone to bounce things off of until they reach a point where they remember something they already knew but had forgotten. I've done counseling, though. I've been poked at 11 o'clock at night to say, do you mind if I talk to you? I think I just did something really bad. I suppose, like an author, the question I most often asked is, where did you get the idea for this again? What prompted this? Are you insane? I've been asked all these things and more. A lot of the responses I get are, you must be crazy, or why would you do this sort of thing, or how can you justify this? I love that last question the most. How does one justify any human activity? How did, Martin Luther justify nailing those theses to the door? And I don't compare myself to Martin Luther. I'm not that great a man. But it's a matter of people just reaching out, people asking for help. That's the first step.
What's particularly interesting about this is that both First Churches of Cyberspace essentially function the same way, through a website and chat lines. Mr. Henderson signs on every Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight to host a discussion with anyone who wants to examine their beliefs.
How do we distinguish between true and false beliefs, if there is any such thing?
Charles Henderson has no hesitation in also creating discussion, even on subjects which the Church traditionally has been slow to deal with.
There are 2 reasons that I have a section on the homepage where there's a debate about homosexuality in the Bible. The first reason is that this is one of the hottest issues in our religious communities today. It has a potential for dividing religious communities like nothing else in America since the Civil War and the issue of slavery. So it's a very hot and a very divisive issue. We invited two world-class scholars to speak on the issue, taking two sides of the question. And we've invited people to respond to their papers. Now, I think the internet can be an interesting place to carry on such a hot discussion because people, in a way, are at one remove from each other when they debate this issue. They're not likely to get up in a room and punch each other like they might if you brought such a topic into a church meeting. So in a way, it may be a safe haven in which to discuss issues that are not so safe to discuss in the intimacy. Plus, people can preserve a degree of anonymity even as they participate in these very emotionally charged topics. And so that's another reason why the internet is a good format for religious communities to deal with issues that are very controversial and potentially very divisive.
Another of the big issues that raises its head here is whether these sites are being built for information and enlightenment, or if in fact they're being created to serve primarily as evangelical propaganda. Digital missionaries using the web as a place to convert the heathen masses of cyberspace.
I think it's potentially a great enhancement of evangelizing. And if we use it properly, we can accomplish a great deal. That's what we're intending to do, but it's up to the humans involved to develop the potential. At the moment, we are more potential than we are actuality.
We really don't want to charm anyone. We want them, if we say with the grace of God, to come to understand the truth that Christ spoke. That's all. So whether they like me or not, or you, is not a factor. And we think the material that can be placed on internet allows them to meet Christ. So that's all. We're very pleased with that.
I personally am here to move myself further along the evolutionary scale and maybe drag a friend or two along for the ride, because it'll be a fun one. What I see with the internet is that making it possible. People are going to be able to sit around at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you first wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, is there a God? Or, oh my God, this must be true. You have the potential within 30 seconds to be talking to everyone else who's also up at 3 in the morning pondering the same question. And with that networking, both literally and metaphorically, is going to come a great deal more freedom. And that's going to be where religion goes. It's going to be a whole bunch of people saying, oh my, that's what it's all about.
Result in a type of problem that some religious leaders only dream about. For out of the enormous community of the internet, there is the potential to create huge congregations, potential parishioners in the millions. Yet that is not what Charles Henderson neither foresees nor wants.
I'm not really interested in having a congregation of several million. I don't really think that you can have real relationships or carry on the kind of things that religious community provides with that many numbers, that masses. I think that there will be people who identify with what I personally am doing or what the people that I work with are doing, but there'll be hundreds of internet congregations, thousands of internet religions springing up like mushrooms all over the place. And so although there might be 150 million people on the internet, they won't all be on my page. They'll be on countless other different pages. And so there will be small communities all over the internet, just as there are small churches all over the world right now.
There are, of course, some immediate questions that come to mind when we start thinking about religion in cyberspace, other than pondering the number of gigabytes in the head of a pin. For in those 3 o'clock mornings, one is also inclined to wonder if perhaps even God, like the rest of us, might in his spare time surf the net.
God surfed the internet? Of course, God surfs the internet. God, one of the basic and most fundamental beliefs, not only of Christians, but most biblical religions, is that God is omnipresent. God is everywhere. And since the internet exists, God is there in the internet.
Whether or not the internet will ever replace the traditional modes of worship is a moot point. But there's no doubt that the organized religions, and even just some committed individuals, have taken it on themselves to help fill what they see as the religious void in cyberspace. And by approaching that void honestly, no matter which denomination, faith, or set of beliefs they hold, they together can only increase the value of spiritual life on the internet. If you've access to the World Wide Web, we've prepared a site about this series. This is the address. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Till next time, goodbye.